Hello and welcome to today's McMaster University Continuing Education Caregiving Essentials webinar, Ceremonies for Renewal, how to weave ceremony into everyday caring. I would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we reside. McMaster University recognizes and acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations, and within the lands protected by Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. My name is Jennifer, and I'll be your host on behalf of McMaster Continuing Education. Today, I am joined by our facilitators, Donna Thompson and Julie Keon. Donna Thompson is the author of The Four Walls of My Freedom, Lessons I've Learned from a Life of Caregiving. She is a consultant and speaker on issues relating to family caregiving, disability, and aging. Donna is a patient and family advisor on health research and policy and teaches family caregivers in Canada how to advocate for care in hospital and in the community. She blogs regularly at the Caregivers Living Room. Donna is the facilitator of Caregiving Essentials and Infection Prevention and Control for Caregivers and Families, our free online courses for family caregivers. And I would like to introduce you to Julie Keon. Julie Keon has been supporting people for over 25 years as they navigate life from beginning to end, wearing many hats from birth doula to marriage officiant to grief counselor. She has helped individuals and families navigate life's big and small moments, including birth, postpartum, marriage, illness, dying, death, and grief. As a life cycle celebrant, Julie creates meaningful ceremony and ritual to assist in these transitions. She shares this one blessed life with her husband, Tim, and their daughter, Meredith, in the Ottawa Valley. She captured the unique adventure of mothering a child with medical fragility in her book, What I Would Tell You. Donna, I'll hand things over to you.
Thank you so much, Jen, and welcome, Julie, my friend and my colleague in all things caregiving. We have some slides to illustrate our discussion today about a fascinating topic, which is how to weave ceremony into everyday caring. So we're going to be talking about ceremony and ritual as a tool for healing, resilience, and many other purposes that Julie's going to tell us all about. The myriad of ways that ceremony and ritual can ease the burden of care, ease suffering, and assuage grief and loss. So, Julie, welcome to Caregiving Essentials webinar.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's really a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to our discussions. You know, I heard this quote as I was driving, and I heard someone talking about ceremony as it happened on a radio show, I think National Public Radio or CBC or something. And that these words stuck in my head so much because I knew our webinar was coming up. So here we are. Julie, can you tell us about ceremony, ritual, what they are, and what is the difference between those two things?
Sure, I would love to. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I hope you will learn some things that will help you in your own caregiving or help the people you take care of. So ritual and ceremony are often used interchangeably, but there is a difference. The first thing I want to say is that ritual is often connected to religion. So people, when they hear the word ritual, when I use the term ritual, people will often say to me, "Oh no, I'm not religious." So there are religious rituals. However, ritual is available to everybody. It benefits people regardless if they're religious or spiritual or have secular beliefs. Humans have been using ritual probably maybe not the beginning of time, but certainly there's evidence 150,000 years ago that people were using ritual, especially when it came to burying their people. It's ritual is meant to take you away from the ordinary, so to kind of take you out of ordinary time and space. So that in some way you are transformed in that space of time. Rituals are part of ceremony. So when we create a ceremony, when I create a ceremony as a celebrant, there are all different elements to that ceremony. There's often, obviously words. There's words that are crafted specifically for the purpose. There's often music, and then there's also rituals that make up the ceremony. Rituals center around transitions, so changes that have happened, changes that are happening, and changes that are going to happen. The most important thing, I think, for ritual or a ceremony is that it's meaningful. And so I guess for me as a life cycle celebrant, what I do, or what my specialty is to create rituals and ceremony that are meaningful and are created for the person, the individual, the family, or the group, or the community, depending on what the need is. So when you think of ritual, you can think of, if the power goes out, you have to light candles. That's not a ritual. But when you light candles on a birthday cake, that's a ritual that people are familiar with. We light candles on a cake to celebrate, another birthday. Or if you were to light candles during a ceremony to, signify all the different aspects of a person's life, you might light a candle for each thing. That's a ritual. So that's a really good way just to make the difference of how it becomes a ritual, is the meaning that's attached to it. So that's it in a nutshell.
And, ritual to me implies something that you do again and again. Is that always the case?
No, there are sustenance rituals. So if you, you might have routine where every morning you get up, you brush your teeth, you do your thing in the morning. That can be a routine. But if you get up every morning and you go through a special way of making your coffee, and then you go sit outside and you have to sit in a certain chair and you maybe say a prayer or you meditate, that's more of a ritual. And that would be called a sustenance ritual because it's one that you do every morning. Most of the rituals I do are created it's like a one-time thing. But there are rituals that I do personally that I've learned work for me in different circumstances that I will use repeatedly.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk today about some of the rituals that you do for yourself, for other people, and how we as caregivers can do some of these things ourselves. And I guess I really want to know from the get-go, what is the benefit of ritual and ceremony? What do we get from it? How does it make us feel? And in the context of, I want to say, ongoing trauma, that is the caregiving crisis today, complex trauma that many people experience in caring without sufficient support. What is it that people can get out of ceremony and ritual generally?
Well, generally, if a ritual has been created in a way that's meaningful for the person who's doing the ritual, there should be some sort of transformation that occurs. They should feel some shift happen from the where they started to when they ended. And it's the same with ceremony. You go into a ceremony, you know, in one way, and if the ceremony is successful, you leave feeling that something has shifted within you. And I think that's the important thing. And sometimes talking isn't enough. You know, I'm a counselor, and I incorporate ritual in my counseling because sometimes just talking doesn't do the trick. And so if I can give people tools to do something to honor, you know, that first anniversary after a death, or if it's you know, a day that's going to be difficult to get through, I can offer them some sort of ritual that's meaningful. And it can be such a simple thing, but it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. We'll begin to explore what this really looks like and what ceremony is. So, Julie, would you like to tell us about your family, first of all?
Sure. This is my husband Tim and my daughter, our daughter, I should say, Meredith. Meredith had a lack of oxygen at birth, and she was full term, but her lack of oxygen resulted in a profound brain injury. And she was expected to live to be 7 or 8, and she just turned 18 in December. She's, you know, she's very medically complex and requires tremendous amount of care. She's our only child. And she's, I mean, she's just, well, you can see the joy on her face. She's a happy, beautiful creature that I feel blessed to be the mother of most
Yeah.
days.
Except when the night nurse doesn't show up.
Except when staff bails, and
Yeah.
yeah.
But I can see the joy on your and Tim's faces too. Such a
Yeah.
joyful family.
We try.
Oh, I know. It's fantastic. Thank you for
Thanks,
sharing.
Donna.
You began your journey with ritual in a formal way when you began to produce these pregnancy belly casts. And I have so many questions about this. So you wanted to mark your pregnancy with Meredith in a meaningful way for you. And this is your very own belly cast. Did you make this one yourself?
So I was a belly caster, and I did cast pregnant women. I did hundreds of casts for a few years when I was a birth doula. This cast I did on myself, like the original cast. I didn't do the artwork. I commissioned an artist to do the artwork. But yeah, this cast was to mark, you know, the beginning of, you know, motherhood and, you know, pregnancy, and to kind of preserve this moment in time. It ended up meaning so much more after Meredith was born, because, you know, when I created this cast, I had a whole other idea of what, you know, mothering was going to be like. And this cast sat in a closet wrapped in a blanket for 16 years. So
Wow.
before it was painted, it was the intention was that I would, you know, prep it for painting, and I would have painted it and probably decorated or embellished it in some way. That was the plan. But then, you know, Meredith's birth sent us down a whole other path, and I probably didn't really come up for air for about 16 years. But to mark her 16th birthday, because she officially doubled her life expectancy, I decided to finally, you know, pull it out of the closet and kind of look at it and all of the dreams I think that, you know, that this cast contained for our future, and really mark this birthday by, you know, by commissioning someone to create this cast. So yeah, so that's what it finally was decorated. And I, you know, every part of that cast, there's a symbol meaning to the artwork that's on it.
It's a remarkable thing. And I didn't know that you only took it out of the closet when Meredith's 16th birthday. You know, looking at this cast as we were putting this slide deck together, I thought so much about the way that we mark happy passages and tragic loss passages. And I thought about the we have somewhere in this house, my husband, from my mother-in-law, we got these tiny brass baby shoes
Mhm.
of my husband's. And this was a tradition back in, I guess, the 50s, right?
Yeah, and the 70s.
And the
Yeah,
70s.
yeah, right into the 70s. Yeah,
Yeah. And so, like, that's a cast of his body part that
yeah.
shows that we remember his and celebrate him as a baby. And you can always look at these baby shoes for the rest of his life.
Mhm.
And in a way, there's something similar about this cast.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's marking these big transitions in life, really.
Oh,
Um, and I guess for me personally, since Meredith was born, I've always felt death lurking nearby because you're always living in this strange world of um, with life expectancy. She may not live past the age of 7, but not definitely not 8, and then it's probably 10, and then eventually you just get tired of the life expectancies because
mhm.
obviously
Yeah.
it's really hard to predict that.
Yeah.
And that's why I decided to boldly put a feminized skull on a pregnancy cast, because I feel that, you know, um, there's such a close connection between birth and death.
Yeah.
They're just kind of the bookends of our lives. And then I embellished it with all kinds of things connected to the ocean because Meredith's name is Meredith Osha. Yeah. So the octopus tentacles, there's 8 of them because she was to live to be 8. So
Oh,
that's why her 8th birthday cake was actually an octopus. So
oh.
yeah.
But
So
also because she has her arms around you because you hold her, or there was a time when you could not put her down.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
she wasn't able to use a wheelchair. You had to hold her all of her waking hours. And so it implies that being held
yeah.
too.
I never saw that in that image. So
Oh,
that's really cute that
well,
you thought that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. We held her for I think 15 hours a day for 8.5 years. Yeah, we couldn't
yeah, I know.
really put her down.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Can we
yeah.
have the next slide, please? Because
Yeah.
we want to talk about other kinds of.
Mhm.
Now, this is a mandala. This is to celebrate Meredith's 17th birthday.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you do a lot of mandalas, I know. And tell us
Yeah,
what they are and how to make
sure.
them and what they mean.
So I wouldn't say I do a lot, but they're a tremendous amount of time, and they really are a gift, I suppose. Um, it's really it's almost like a meditation to go into nature and collect things that you see that are, generally you're not harming anything. You find things that are local to you. And this one I just created on our back deck in the snow because her birthday's in December. And because it was kind of her last year before she transitioned into adulthood, which was some place we never imagined we would be, this 17th birthday was, uh, it just carried a lot for me. And so I remember walking down this, trail, and it was freezing out. And I just had this basket and I collected all these things, and you never know what you're going to produce. You just kind of sit down and lay it out, and then you just start usually from the center, and you just work your way out, and when you're done. And all of the things that are part of this were all found in nature in December, which I think is kind of beautiful too, because
It is.
we don't really notice all the colors and textures and that kind of thing in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one was done for her birthday, and I did one for my mother's 75th birthday. I went to her garden and surprised her because she's a gardener and loves her garden. And I went out to nature and did this walk, and then I came back and brought her outside and said, "Happy birthday." And it was this massive massive one on her under her pine tree in her backyard. So
Oh, it's so beautiful. So I'm very curious, Julie, when you were making this, what were you thinking about?
I was I was just reflecting on that's the last 17 years. And I think knowing that this was the last year that we were going to be in the in the care of all of the professionals and organizations that had been caring for her since birth. I thought, I remember thinking back to her birth and all of the challenges and how far we'd come. And also, as I got out to the outside, thinking that, yes, I'm terrified about her turning 18, that as this year unfolds, we're getting closer to this other big transition. But I also felt very calm knowing that we also never imagined doing 17 years, and we have. So whatever the future holds, we'll also be able to do it as well, right? So
Yeah.
it was almost like in the center, and then as I moved out, it was, I could feel that shift within myself, basically, that, okay, I'm terrified and I'm reflecting, and now this is going to be okay.
Yeah. So if someone wanted to have a go at making a mandala themselves, what do you think people need to do? Does it always need to be made of objects from nature, for example? Is it helpful that, or can you make it from your mother's jewelry or any
Oh,
objects?
yeah, of course. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You
Hmm.
can do, I mean, nature is only because, it's just, it's almost like a walking meditation. There's this whole process to it, to collecting. And you may not have enough of one thing, so you have to get creative with how you use those items so they still go around the circle. But no, you can create these out of anything for sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So Kirsten is saying in the chat box, as a senior to be and a caregiver, I have had friends who are not with me anymore in body. I go to places where we went together and their spirit really comes alive. It is an awesome feeling like no other. And I think that that's really what we're talking about here is we're talking about intentionally concentrating on a person we love.
Mhm.
And I think very often about the challenge we all have as caregivers to make peace with things that are hard, things that are painful, things that are very unfair.
Mhm.
And this, I see making this mandala is, it seems to me that it may be a way to access that making peace with more easily, more directly.
Yeah, and the thing with the mandala, and this is why doing it out of nature. And I remember years ago in Victoria at the art gallery, there were Buddhist monks that made this phenomenal one out of sand. Like
Oh,
they
I
poured,
saw that one at a gallery because it toured
yes.
the world and I saw it in the UK.
Yeah, and they spend hours and hours and hours and weeks. And then as soon as it's complete, they just get a
Huh.
broom and they sweep it up. Right.
Yeah.
So the thing with these, going out to nature and doing this is you spend all of this time and all of this reflection. And in the end, I think within a few hours, it snowed on top of my mandala.
Yeah.
But I could still see it through the snow, and I took a photo of it. And it's almost like, just accepting that, things change quickly, that we have to surrender to change and trust that, we will find the way, however we find that. The interesting thing was in the spring when all the snow had melted, I found bits and pieces still of this on the deck, like months
Oh,
later.
wonderful.
But
Uh,
it's doing it knowing it's going to, it's going to be gone. The
yeah.
wind can blow up and you just finish it and then the wind blows up and blows it all away. But it's kind
Yeah.
of symbolic, I guess, in that way of life.
Yeah. But it also opens up a space to make another one,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
can continuously turn over your thoughts, memories, and remake I mean, there's another opportunity for the 18th one, and it's going to be different.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. And this is something, if there's a space that you go to where you feel your friend, this is something that you could do sometime on a special day that,
Mhm.
you can gather things and create something. It's almost like you're leaving a gift too for people who pass by.
In your book, I had the privilege of writing the foreword in the first edition of your book, What I
Mhm.
Would Tell You. And, one of the passages in your book that's struck me, and I still think about a lot, is that you talk about grief, inviting grief in for tea
Mhm.
and sitting with it. And tell me more about that.
I think I learned early on. I mean, grief is a hot topic right now. Like, there's so
Mhm.
much out there now with grief, and websites and books coming out and that kind of thing. And I think it took me a long time to recognize early on that what I was feeling often was grief, because 18 years ago, I thought of grief as something that you go through when somebody dies, or when you have a big loss. But I guess I still had thought that, you would grieve and then there'd be, as people like to say, closure, and then you're done. But I learned that grief was kind of always around, and I imagine grief like the person who comes to your house, that annoying person that you don't dislike them, but you don't usually have time for them. And they come and they're banging on your door and they're hoping you're home, and you hide. You run upstairs and you're like, don't tell them I'm here. Um, that's how I think of as grief. That grief is that visitor that comes, especially in this experience of caregiving, comes often, and it's it's it seems that it's lessons, or it's more easily I don't like to say dealt with, but when we put the kettle on and invite it in and sit at the table and just sit with it for a little while and give it the attention it needs, because grief really does need attention and need to be witnessed. And that's one of my personal rituals, is that I make a cup of tea and I sit in my red chair. I call my red chair as my special little chair, and I'll just sit sometimes and just put my hands on my heart, and I just take deep breaths and I just let it come up. But I always make that cup of tea because I'm inviting grief for tea to my
Oh,
table, basically.
yeah. Yeah.
And often when I do workshops, I serve tea, and then I
Yeah.
explain to them that we're having a tea party with grief, basically.
Yeah. I have this, um, I talk about 2 cups of tea a lot in the context of how to embed self-care practices into caregiving. And rather than, if someone, you usually, what we normally do is make a cup of tea for the person we're caring for, and we think to ourselves, oh, I'll have mine later. But I always say make 2 cups of tea, because there are 2 people in a caring relationship and they
Hmm.
each need care. Um, this ritual for grief and healing, tell us about this.
Oh, well, I mean, there's endless options for rituals with grief and healing. I mean, this photograph was a ritual that I had created for at the very beginning of the pandemic, when I saw people were isolated and people were worried and anxious, and kids were at home from school and nobody really knew what was happening. So I created this ritual, and I think we're going to give it out to everyone after, are we?
Yes, we have it
Yeah.
in a document
Hmm.
form, and it's
Hmm.
going to be emailed to all of the people who registered for the webinar today as an email attachment, how to do this grief and healing um, worry ritual.
Yeah, so the worry ritual, I just thought it would help families or people that were all by themselves, and uh, set up a space in your home and have a bowl of water and a little dish of salt, And throughout the day, you know, when you're feeling worried about something, go sit there and think about your worry and pick up some salt and just sprinkle it into the water, watch it dissolve. It was creating a space for your worry. So you weren't feeling this kind of chaos inside all day long. And then at the end of the day, the individual or the family could go outside and just throw the water, excuse me, throw the water out and just have the earth look after it. And, you know, at that point, you could go in and light a candle and say what you were grateful for that day. And it just helped people to have a place to put their worries with you doing the ritual. And I thought of it as salt water, as tears, you know, because there was so much grief, you know, and still is. I mean, now we're in a state of chronic grief with this pandemic. But that's just one ritual. I mean, there's a million rituals that you can do with loss and grief, you know, and I'll give some ideas too at the end, because I think we want to, you know, definitely talk about how people do this or incorporate this into their lives. So I'll give you some really neat little ideas that will help with that.
So this is a morning mandala, thinking about a particular person. Can you tell us about this one?
So this one was created actually at Britannia Beach, which was a space where this person loved to walk. And her death was...
Can we say this was our friend?
Yeah, this was our friend Kim, who was big advocate for families. She was a caregiver herself. Her son Kevin died say 4 years ago-ish. And once after he died, she really, I mean, she was always the mother of all the mothers, but she, even more so, she dedicated her time to One More Thing, which is a Facebook page for parents who have children that are complex. And she, you know, she died suddenly. So it was a massive shock to the community. I did hold some grief circles virtually through Roger Nielsen House and the Navigator program through CHEO for the parents, because nobody knew what to do with this. You know, there was so much shock. There were a few mothers who were kind of from the early days, because we all, you know, had children that were older now. And we met at Britannia Beach, and I just invited everyone to bring some things from their own gardens. So none of us knew what each other was bringing. I brought the sunflower for the middle part because I thought it was perfect for her. And one of the mums brought some special stones from Prince Edward Island, and we just created this. We took our time, we were quiet, we created it. We brought some water from the river, and we each took a turn pouring water around it and just expressing our sorrow with the loss of her and what we were going to miss. And then I brought some chocolate bars of her favorite chocolate bars. And we all then, you know, kind of ate chocolate and talked about the sweet things and the, you know, the joyful moments. And it just gave us a place to put that, you know. So
yeah. And it also illustrates so beautifully how a small group can come together and do a ceremony like this collectively. And there is an opportunity for everyone to contribute to this beautiful ceremony. Can we go to the next slide?
I was going to say, there's no right or wrong way.
No.
It always turns out beautifully. As long, you know, sometimes you have the person who has it imagined. That person sometimes is me. And, you know, you really have to step out of that and just let it unfold. And it always does turn out beautifully.
Yes. Well, imagination is a big part. So this is just, I think, another photo, isn't it, of the ceremony for Kim.
And you can see the size of the sunflower in the center of it. So the photo before, it doesn't really show how big it was. It was big. Like we had to like walk all around to place our things, and then we left it there. And you know, people that walk by would have seen it, and I think people would recognize that it was something, you know, sacred.
Yes.
Yeah.
The sacred is very evident in it because it is so purposeful. It's so
Mhm.
planned. There is a form and a complex design in it. Um, I want to make sure we get to all our slides. So can we go to
Yeah.
the next one, please? Tell us about changing seasons and what they mean to a caring life.
Well, this photo is from December 21st. So after Meredith was born, I had a very difficult time with Christmas. I was raised in a, pretty traditional Irish Catholic family. We celebrated Christmas. Um, I'm not practicing now, so the Christmas for me is more the traditions of it. But after Meredith was born, I really I had no desire to do Christmas at all. I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want a tree because Christmas to me was something that was really about children, and Santa and presents and all that kind of thing. And she didn't understand that, and she doesn't understand the concept of Christmas. So it was like a bit of an act of rebellion, I think, on my part that I just said no, I don't want to do that. So I had to create new traditions. One of the things, I've always marked the solstice, but the solstice became more meaningful for me after Meredith was born. And so December 21st, I usually will have anyone who wants to come. During COVID, it was just Tim and I think last year, but um, just marking, the longest day of the year and marking the dark periods, talking about the dark periods, shining light on the darkness of the previous year, and doing rituals that start off as somber and the darkness, and then by the end of it there's lots of light in our space, and incorporating ritual for renewal and new beginnings and setting intentions for the year ahead. And this always, of course, includes Meredith because she is the center of my universe. So
Yeah, of course she
I
is.
think I think this year one of the things we did was we wrote down all the things we wanted to let go of, and I passed around a dish of water, and the paper that everyone wrote on, what they didn't realize was dissolvable paper. So as I passed it around, I said, "Put your paper in the bowl," and then I divvied up that water into little vials. And everyone was instructed to, there were sunflower seeds that were also part of this ritual, this ceremony. So in the spring, like now, everyone is to plant the sunflower seed that they held to set their intentions on December 21st, and water it with that water of letting go, because, growth comes from all of the hard times as well. And then they're to plant it outside. So in August, when they see the sunflower, it's symbolic of of what was done and said, and the intentions that were set 6, 7, 8 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in that. For one thing, I think what a takeaway for me here is that we don't have to be stuck in our family traditions. We can make up new ones that suit us, that are responsive to our current realities of caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can invent our own ceremonies to give us what we need, from marking seasons or holidays or whatever. And then I guess the other thing is that, the way your imagination to create these things. I mean, I think that everybody, if they set their intention to it, everyone's imagination can bring them to a personal place of creativity for these ceremonies. And
Mm-hmm.
that, for example, moving from darkness to light, moving from a hard seed that is an inanimate object to something that is growing and is beautiful, and is so symbolic of life and joy.
And
Uh,
light, a sunflower is like sunflower, like it's the sunflower.
it is the sunflower.
Sunflower,
That's
yeah.
right. I really hope that people listening today will begin to ponder um, what they have and what could be a personal ceremony for just themselves or for members of an immediate family or a circle of best friends that share a particular life experience, maybe, related to serious illness, disability, or the experience of giving care to someone you love, or someone you've just stepped up to take up that role. Yeah, I wanted to talk about ceremonies that celebrate each other. I mean, obviously we have birthdays, but I've been thinking a lot about how someone with cognitive disabilities, for example, cognitive impairments, how do you tell someone, how do you use ceremony to help them know that they are loved?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Like for Meredith, she may not get a lot out of a ritual because she would not understand the intention of it. So I can do rituals and include her, and that's more for me.
Okay.
Right?
But that's very valid.
Yeah, she was part of our vow renewal ceremony. We rinsed our wedding rings in water that was shipped from the Pacific Ocean, because that's where most of our relationship was and began. And Meredith was we walked up the aisle with her, and she wore my wedding dress. We had it tailored down to fit her little body, but we poured the water into a seashell, and we took her little hand to rinse our wedding bands in the salt water, to get rid of anything that came before this anniversary that we were still carrying, that we didn't need to carry with us. And at the end, we took the water and we threw it under this gigantic blue spruce tree that's in my parents' yard that we planted on our wedding day. So we watered our wedding tree with the water that was used to rinse our wedding rings that Meredith helped us with as part of the ceremony. She was not happy. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. The photos are hilarious because she's grimacing and she's mad, and I'm kind of like trying to get her hand into the shell. But the meaning of that was really beautiful for us. Meredith would rather, be at home and not be bothered with it, but that's okay.
Yeah. One of the questions I wanted to ask you today, Julie, was we've been talking about marking, dispensing with worry, sitting with grief, celebrations of important passages and transitions in life, celebrating each other. But can you tell us something about, I wondered when I looked at the belly cast, for example, I began to wonder about ceremony and ritual as it is used or could be used in a family to mark suffering itself. I mean, going back, I was baptized and raised Catholic too, and there's an awful lot about Christ on the cross and the stations of the cross and marking suffering. I wondered, does anyone ever do a cast of a scar or marking something that is significant in its meaning about pain and suffering? And is it healing? Is it a good idea to wallow in suffering by marking it in this way? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I have casted women who've had mastectomies, so that they have this physical, tangible cast of what they're before and after even. And then they decorate those. It becomes art therapy, to decorate and to embellish those things. Again, it depends on the intention. So if somebody feels that they have suffered and they want to shift the suffering as a negative and shift it into more of a positive, that they want to celebrate the resilience and the lessons learned and that kind of thing, or just honor it as part of their life, what I would do is I would sit with that person and we go through a process of interviewing where I ask all kinds of questions. And what comes from the answers that I get from the person, that's when my brain starts to go, oh, well, we could use this as a symbol of that. And then that's how you create the ritual. So it's difficult to just have for me to say to you, oh, well, for that, you would do this, because it's so unique and individual and personal.
Mhm.
If somebody comes to me and says, my abusive parent who traumatized me, who caused me to let go of my person I was as a child, to change my name, they've died. And I don't know what to do with that. I want to reclaim that part of me. And I want to let go of all the abuse. When I sit with them and I hear the story and the words they use, that's how then I start to craft the ritual and the ceremony that will take place. And for those ones, I'm usually a witness to that person going through those rituals. So I could create it for them, but if they go do it all by themselves, it may not have as much impact as it would with having someone there like me to witness and guide them through it and support them through it. And those are more complex situations, but for everyday things like you're walking around with a bunch of anger towards somebody and you don't know what to do with it, and you keep telling your spouse or your friends about how angry you are, that's when a ritual can help make that shift. I wrote down this quote because I thought it was really, really beautiful. Francis Weller has written a book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. And it's a beautiful book about grief and loss, but he talks a lot about the importance of ceremony and witnessing our grief and that kind of thing. And he says, we need to build faith in ourselves as ritually literate people. So we all have the ability to do this. We all have the ability to be creative and use our imagination. And again, it's what is meaningful for you. That's really the bottom line. He goes on and writes, this concert between the human and the sacred is ancient. It is held in the bones. Trust this bond. It is our healing ground. So you think about your intention. That's the first thing, is what are you hoping to achieve with this ritual? What do you want to accomplish? I often say, why do you want to do a ritual around this particular thing? And usually people want to do something with forgiveness or letting go, releasing, just moving from a place of stuckness. Do you want to do this alone, or do you want to have somebody there to witness it with you? And you can just have a friend who will come and sit quietly and watch you as you go through your ritual, or you do it by yourself. I do a lot of rituals by myself. What symbols are important to you? What action will help in creating the ritual? So does dissolving resonate with you? Does fire resonate with you? Does burying or planting, burning? So you think of the elements: air, water, earth, fire. What resonates with you? If it's something like a betrayal, fire feels better than dissolving in water, right? So you see what feels good for you. And then you just, you create the space, you set the time aside, you gather the things that you're going to need, and you just do everything with intention, like the grief tea party I just mentioned. That's very simple, but it's a ritual. I can walk around feeling the grief and not tend to it, or I can actually stop, set time aside, make my tea in a ritual way, use a certain type of tea, sit down and make it an actual ritual. And I walk away feeling that something has happened. There's been a shift.
Yeah. It's so interesting because it's the water is a very constant theme in a lot of the flowers and water. And, a couple of webinars ago, I did a webinar with Dr. Pat McGrath on trauma and PTSD and family caregiving. And he did a research project where we used a lifeline, and it's a virtual thing, but you place stones for trauma on a rope that represent the traumatic events, flowers for the happy events, and candles for sad but not traumatic events. And there are
Mm,
these symbols that you place
mhm.
along a rope, and that and this act of remembering and plotting out your life like this is very healing in itself. And there's a lot of evidence to show that it is. Before we go, the wonderful Janet Fanaki, who has an incredibly fantastic podcast called Resilient People, is here with us today. And Janet lost her husband tragically to brain cancer at a very young age. And says in the chat that she's reflecting on your belly cast, Julie, and she said her husband went for a few rounds of radiation treatment for brain cancer.
Mhm.
And I remember his peace in walking out carrying his large mesh face casts. He brought them home and kept them in the closet. Now that he's gone, they are still in the closet. I pulled them out recently, and it's haunting to look at them. The exact replica of his face. I wish I knew what to do with them without spooking us.
Mm. I had a whole bunch of shivers as you read that.
Me too. It's hard to
Um,
read without being
yeah,
careful.
yeah, yeah. I'm so sorry for your loss. And there's many things that come to mind as, just as you were reading that. And, sometimes it's just talking, and I can maybe give you some ideas if you would like that. I'd be happy to do that.
Well, perhaps that's a great note to end on, Julie, because I
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that everyone knows that there are people like you, life cycle celebrants, who are skilled in coaching people to do their own ceremonies and rituals. If people don't want to take the plunge themselves and they feel like they want a little bit of help with it, that you are there. And Julie, thank you so much. What a rich conversation.
That
I
went
just,
so fast.
yeah, oh, it did. It did. We could go on. And I would love
Yeah.
to go on because it is truly a remarkable discussion about things that are very infrequently spoken about. So,
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
oh, thank you. I hope we'll have you back soon.
Anytime.
Good. Over to you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Donna, and thank you, Julie, for a wonderful webinar today. And thank you all so much for joining us.